Hello, everyone. In this video, I want to talk briefly about the book Sick Souls, Healthy Minds, How William James Can Save Your Life, written by John Kaag. It's a recently published book, and we can talk about three different aspects in this book. One is a presentation of William James, his philosophy, his psychology, the interrelation between the two, and some relevant biographical elements from James's life to show how his life was the ground of his philosophy and his psychology. And this is, in my view, the best aspect of the book. The best parts of the book are in Kaag's presentation of William James and William James's philosophy. The second aspect of the book is an attempt to make James's philosophy relevant, to show the application, the practical relevance of James's philosophy, especially in relation to possible crises of meaning when we find that our lives might not be worth living or might not feel meaningful to us. And in this sense, Kaag attempts to give us a kind of self-help, not just an academically oriented presentation of William James. This aspect is moderately good. I don't have many objections to this side. The third aspect of the book is John Kaag's own personal life, something like a narrative, but it's not really a narrative. It's a set of facts from his own life. And in my view, even though I like the book in general, this third aspect was the weakest part of the book. Now, I want to add here that I would love to read a book, a personal book by John Kaag. I'm not against that in any way. I just feel like if he wants to do that, he should go all the way. What happened in this book was he ended up stereotyping himself. The way he talked about the facts of his own life was, I think he relied a lot on stereotypical thinking. Like, I think, I cannot really speculate, but I think maybe he wanted to not reveal secrets that implicate other people, or maybe he wanted to maintain his image as relatable, maximally relatable to his readers. So he talked about his divorce, his second divorce, his experiences as a father, and how he realized that he cannot have a theoretical approach to parenting. He should have a more continuous, concrete way of dealing with his child. So as a father, you can't just follow concepts and theories. But these are things that are, I think, typical, relatively speaking, typical problems. And he didn't get into the details of his own life. So even though he does talk about himself in this book, the author, he remains so distant from the facts of his life, from the concrete details of his life, that just doesn't work. That part doesn't work. And his experiences of his work as a teacher, as a philosophy professor, they all seem to me to be very typical episodes, like the difficulty of communicating philosophy to students. So I'll focus on the best part in my little review here. I'll focus more on William James, the presentation of William James. We can begin maybe with the human will, the concept of will, human will, and the place of human will, the capacity to make decisions, to choose. We can also refer to that as that choice decision. You can describe that as taking leaps when we make decision. When we exercise our will, sometimes we can talk about that as taking leaps. So choice, will, human will, as a fact, stands opposed to determinism, or the deterministic image of the world. And this is central to James's philosophy. It has a central place. And I think Kaag makes a very nice and persuasive case for the place of human will in James's overall work. Another concept that is adjacent to human will is participation. The fact of participation, the fact that we participate in states of affairs and situations. When we think about our beliefs, we should consider our participations, our active roles, our choices. So let's get into this a little bit more. The way we usually think about truth, falsity, but the way we evaluate our beliefs. What are the paradigmatic cases of true beliefs? So for example, it's I think quite typical for us to, when we talk about true beliefs, true justified beliefs. We usually make statements like, I have a cup of tea on the desk, or my camera is recording a video at the moment. So these are facts that we make statements about these facts and we evaluate them, we try to verify them. But these are the kinds of examples that don't implicate us and they don't reveal our participation in the situation. So James brings in other kinds of statements that do bring in our participation. So consider, for example, the statement, not is there tea on the table, but a statement like, do you like me? Do you consider me as a friend? So a statement like this, do you like me, shows very well, very effectively the necessity of participation, the necessity of making decisions, the necessity of committing to a preference. So my preference is revealed in that question. And my participation is also revealed and highlighted. I cannot treat you any way I want and expect that my treatment of you won't have no effect on whether or not you consider me a friend or whether or not you like me. These include that the tests, if I test my friend, and if I do experiments on my friends to get to the objective verifications of whether they like me or not, this is a way of messing with their feelings and changing maybe the way in which they think about me, whether or not they consider me as friends. So I can begin with saying, I would like it if you consider me as a friend, and then I can take leaps, participate in human relationships in such a way to make those statements be true. So it is not the case that we just make any statements that we want true or false. It's more that we meet the state of affairs, we meet the other side halfway in a statement, do you like me or not? Do you consider me a friend? It's possible to meet the other person halfway and then the other person joins and the statement becomes true. The answer to that question becomes yes. What else can we say about William James? Another important aspect of James and James's philosophy was that James wanted a philosophy that was not just a philosophy. It was not just pure and divorced from all the other human concerns, separated from all the non-philosophical aspects of life, separated from education, separated from relationships, communities, traditions, love. There is, in fact, a very touching story in the book about a memento cup, it's a souvenir about, and this shows how James and his students subverted the power of the upper level, the bureaucratic, the forces of the university. At least in their own private relationships, they managed to create a space in which the relationship between the students and the teacher had primacy over the bureaucracy of the university. Let's also add a few words about pragmatism. The typical discourse on pragmatism in popular culture, the different caricatures of pragmatism, usually they sound something like this, like if it works, go for it. If it works, it's true. So if what you hold to be true leads to good consequences, just hold that belief. This is too simple and it doesn't really do justice to James in pragmatism. It is not just about whether something works, whether a set of beliefs that we hold works. It's also about what a belief does. It is about what it is that our beliefs lead to, what consequences do our beliefs lead to. So when we compare and contrast beliefs, when we compare and contrast belief systems, something that we should do as part of that comparison is to compare what those beliefs lead to. So that should be part of our examination, part of our investigation, part of our reflections on what we hold to be true systems that we consider as possible truths. But one of the things that we should consider is what, not whether something works or not, but what consequences do these beliefs, do these statements lead to? What would be the case if we hold these statements? Sam Rocha, my friend Sam Rocha, who is the author of the book Folk Phenomenology and a forthcoming book, Philosophical Research in Education, is among the people, a few people, Sam Rocha is the one that I know of. I'm sure there are a few others who regard William James as belonging to the tradition of phenomenology. So why is this important? It is important because phenomenologists insist on something. They insist on not isolating private subjective experience on the one hand, even though some misrepresentations of phenomenology do present phenomenology in that mistaken way. But phenomenology insists on not isolating subjective experience on its own in isolation from the world. And it also insists on not looking at the world and objects and events in isolation, in separation from the mind. Instead, phenomenologists insist on examining mind-world relationships as a target of investigation. What we should investigate is ways in which the mind coordinates with the world, how we inhabit the world, and how the world can have places for us, or has a place for us, a dwelling place for us in various ways. So when we combine the phenomenological angle on James with the pragmatic angle, when we combine these two, we begin to find a way of investigating different belief systems and talking about different belief systems, different traditions as ways of mind-world coordination or mind-culture-world coordination. So in this way, Kaag does a really good job showing the way in which pragmatism has a place in James's philosophy and helps us overcome that simplistic notion of pragmatism that simply says, just see if something works or not. If it gets the job done, then it must be true. It's not like that. It is about examining, in addition to other things, adding that perspective of looking at the consequences. And when it comes to comparing beliefs, comparing what the consequences are. So in short, it's a good book, especially for students. If you are a student in psychology, philosophy, if you like to have a relatively easy reading experience that is grounded in, is based on John Kaag's many years of doing research and reading on William James, yeah, go for it. I would recommend it. It could be fun. I should also add here at the end that William James himself is quite readable. You can read Principles of Psychology or the briefer course, the briefer single volume version of that, which I love. Other works that I've sampled, The Pluralistic Universe, talks to the teachers, and especially the few talks to the students on what makes life significant. And that essay, while I was going through Kaag's book, I also looked at and read the second one of those talks to the students on certain blindness of human being, which is a beautiful reading experience. Great. James is great. So I would recommend checking out John Kaag, Sick Souls, Healthy Minds, and I would also recommend reading William James directly. Okay, that's it. Thank you for your attention, and I will speak with you in future videos.